Alright, so in this video we're going to be looking at forming the present tense with third conjugation IO verbs. There really isn't a huge difference between a regular third conjugation verb and a third conjugation IO verb. The only really thing that stands out initially about an IO verb is going to be in its first forms. When you look at a verb and you have the first principal parts, you have the first principal part, you have the second principal part, the infinitive there. A third conjugation verb means that that infinitive is going to end with a short ERE. That's still going to be holding true for a third IO verb. That's still going to hold true for a third IO verb. The thing that makes an IO verb an IO verb is that its first principal part ends with the letters IO. That's why we call it an IO verb. When we conjugate them is where it starts to come into play that there's a little bit of a change. And the thing that starts to change here is that we form the stem differently. Now normally when we form the stem of a present tense verb, we just drop the RE off the infinitive. With a third IO verb, that's not the best way to do that. The best way to create the stem on a third IO verb is simply to drop the O off the first principal part. So you're left with a stem that is simply the first principal part without the O at the end. So for cupio, meaning to desire, it becomes cupi. After that point, all you have to do to create the forms of the present tense is simply add the endings that we always use for the present tense. So in the active voice, that's O, S, T, must, tis, and now the one trick that comes into play is right here. We don't want an I right before an NT, so we're going to insert the letter U there, and it becomes cupiant, I-U-N-T, that we're going to be putting there. And this works the exact same way if you're using the passive voice. You'll just use those passive endings. There is one change that will come into play there. So let me show you that real quick. With those passive voice endings that we know, that means OR on the first one. The place where it changes is going to be in our second form, that's the second person singular, the U form. It's not going to have an I there. This is the one form that won't do that. It will simply be E-R-I-S, more like what we're used to. That E is coming back from the infinitive. But the rest of that is going to follow your basic patterns, T-U-R, M-U-R, M-I-N-I, and U-N-T-U-R, again, that U popping up before the N. And that's all that there is to creating present tense forms with a third conjugation IO verb.